you have to know what your POV is. What makes you different, why people should pay attention to you, what are you teaching them differently. There's a great POV and messaging expert also on LinkedIn, Joe Daniels. He talks a lot about developing this POV, and this actually can help you with brand differentiation, highlight what makes you different. But before jumping to channels, think very carefully and work through the POV. You can also test it on LinkedIn, for example, and see how it helps you shape your POV.
Welcome to this episode of Indie Board Session. Today I'm with Saurav Gupta, who's the CEO of SalesRobot. And in this podcast, we also have Victoria Rudi, who's going to be my co-host. Maybe Victoria, you can introduce yourself, and then we'll talk more about Saurav.
Yeah, basically I'm helping B2B SaaS companies with messaging.
And Saurav, so you've been the founder and CEO of SalesRobot. Can you tell me a little bit about your background? Like, what did you do before building SalesRobot?
Sure. So, hi everyone, I'm Saurav. I used to be an engineer by training. So my whole thesis behind starting this tool was very straightforward. A lot of B2B sales teams, or founders, marketers, salespeople, they struggle a lot with cold outreach. Cold outreach is ineffective, and it's very hard to get it right, and it's hard to get results from. So I saw a real problem around this. So I used to be basically an engineer at an early stage Silicon Valley startup, right? That was my background. So what I noticed back then as an engineer, while I was talking to a lot of salespeople there, or marketers, was that at an early stage it's very hard to get leads, right? Because nobody knows you, you don't have a brand, you probably nobody cares that you even exist. So from that perspective, I thought cold outreach is one of the best ways to catch attention, some kind of attention, right? When you're starting out. So that was my thought process. What if there was a tool that could do a good job of multi-channel outreach? So there were good LinkedIn outreach tools. There were good email outreach tools. But I thought, why can't we just combine them and make a very good LinkedIn plus email multi-channel outreach tool? So this is what we did. We started 4 years ago, back in 2020. So we from then on, yeah, we've just continued making the product better and just growing the business.
And you mentioned initially that you started by identifying pain points on Facebook groups, right?
So that was a very interesting growth hack for us. What I realized was one of the best ways to get early customers is to look at dissatisfied customers of existing players in the market, right? Because they're already bought into the problem, they just need a better solution, right? Better than it's easier than trying to convince somebody of the whole concept of doing cold outreach. So what I did was I used to hang out in this Facebook group of one of our competitors. I won't name the competitor, but they had a very active Facebook group at that point, and they had about 4,000 members. So what I did was I got one of these Facebook automation tools, added it to my Facebook account, and then I just sent everybody on there like 40 messages per day, and said something like, "Hey, saw you in this group. Are you using this tool? How do you like it?" Simple question, right? No sales pitch, no nothing, just to start a conversation. Yeah, and that got us our very first few clients, and some larger agency clients as well. So that was a very good way to start the conversation in this market.
And how long did it take you to build the first product based on the feedback from these early customers or early prospects?
Yeah, so we started writing the very first line of code around April of 2020, May of 2020, right? And then from then on, it took us, like, I would say, 5 or 6 months to get a good product out. And we got lucky in a lot of ways, because these early customers, like one particular customer, was a large lead gen agency from Manchester who had 80 clients on this other competitor, and they were just very unhappy with them. So they gave us like 5 clients to play around with, right? Their internal sales team to play
Hmm?
around with. So we sort of co-developed the product with them. We didn't develop it in a like a lab somewhere not talking to customers. Like we did it like with them, right, as opposed to without them, right? So it took us 5 or 6 good months to solve a lot of tech challenges, because multi-channel outreach automation is not that easy a problem to solve either, right? You have to take care of the scheduling, you have to take care of the infrastructure working well, you have to take care of the scalability. So we had to do a lot of good tech work on the back end to make sure that it's reliable. So it took us good 6 months to get to a decent version of the product.
In terms of your business trajectory, it seems that you grew very fast, right? Can you tell me a little bit more about that growth trajectory? Because it will, I think it will be interesting to as we talk about the challenges afterwards.
Yeah, so initially we grew quite quickly. I mean, we made our first dollar back in August 2020. That was our very first client. And then by December, we had hit around 8K MRR. And then 3 months later, we were at 20K. So we got very good customers very quickly. And these were mostly agency clients, which is why our growth was faster, because each agency client has about minimum 5 to 10 clients, right? Each agency serves these clients, and we charge per client that they have, right? So that's why our deals were a little bigger. So yeah, we got to 20K MRR pretty much within the first 7 or 8 months of making the first dollar in August, right? So that was a good run because we got quite a few agencies on board. But from then on, I think the growth slowed a little bit, right? So 2021, um, yeah, I don't remember the exact numbers. 2021, we did about like I can just pull it up. I think I recently did this math because we were calculating growth rates, year on year. So yeah, 2021 total we did around 278K overall, right? And then 2022 we did 472K, like total cash collected.
Yeah.
Then 2023 we did like 560K, and then 2024 pretty much the same, 560K. So we're flat in 2024.
So obviously, growth will be one of the challenges that we'll talk about later. In terms of your market, I mean, just to give some context, obviously there are many software in the cold outreach automation software.
Mm.
You have companies like Lemlist and DuckSoup. You also have tools like Walaxy, and then obviously the large players like Salesloft. How do you view the market? And maybe tell me about one or two players that you think have taken an interesting path that allowed them to grow much bigger than you are, for example.
Yeah, I mean, this market is a complete red ocean, right? There's a lot of competitiveness, and it's almost a commodity at this point, right? So that's very hard to create a unique angle or a unique brand in such a commoditized market. Having said that, still possible because it's a large market, right? So I view it almost like as a D2C, like almost a water brand in that sense, right? Like it's that much a commodity that you could, but yeah, new water brands get created all the time, and like it's possible, right? Just because something is super competitive doesn't mean you can't have a unique voice in that market. You just need to think a little differently in that sense. Yeah, so that's my take on this market. Super crowded, but then there are three different tiers of this market, right? There's the small business segment, people who are just starting out trying to do cold outreach. There's the middle tier, which is like smaller sales teams, 5 to 10 salespeople. They're trying to do cold outreach to make sure they have a predictable revenue pipeline. And then there's the bigger sales teams, right? 10 plus salespeople, right? So these people have very different needs. So they would most probably go buy an outreach or sales loft because they're using like Salesforce as the CRM. They want deeper integrations with Salesforce, and that's it. So these are the three tiers of this market, right? The very small micro SMB, SMB, and then mid market to enterprise I'm counting as one. So that's the makeup, and then coming to how the competitors have grown in this. So I'll take two case studies to sort of share what I learned about this market and why some people grew faster than others. So if you look at Lemlist, for example, right? Lemlist came on the scene around 2018. They had a very, very good marketing play, in the sense that they almost built it like a movement, right? It's easy to say but hard to build a movement around your product. So they had good design, they had good messaging, they created a very large community, and they really made everyone feel like they were a part of this movement of a new wave of outreach tools. And that's how they were able to, stand out in a crowded market and create a unique voice for themselves. And that shows in their team's focus as well. Like every employee at Limlist is tasked with getting at least 20-30,000 followers on LinkedIn in their first year, create a unique brand for themselves. So they've, almost like systematized it. And every new product they launch, they just do the same playbook, right? Done the same with Taplio, a new tool by Lemlist for LinkedIn content posting, right? And writing AI, using AI to write LinkedIn content. They went from nothing to 6 million ARR in a new category. They essentially created that category. They're that good. So they are very good at that, right? Like audience building and community building, and using that as a feedback and just iterating fast and getting out there. That's one, right? That's one case study I really like, and I really like studying their tactics around how they actually did it, right? And what are the micro things they did on a day-to-day basis to make that happen. um, so yeah, that is one. The other case study I find very interesting that grew fast in this space was actually Volexy, right? They did very heavy SEO investment, like very early on. Like if you look at their blog, they wrote like 3,000 something articles in a very short span of time, and these are high quality articles. So fast pace of publishing, as well as quality, and they went international very early. So like I was talking to the CEO, they said like of their like 4 years they had 10 million ARR, and 5 million of that comes from France, right? So French market was a core focus very early on, because they're French, right? So that helps. So yeah, those are two tactics, two case studies I like from this market. Otherwise, there are other bunch of slow growers that are at around 10 million ARR, like Mailshake took 7-8 years to get to 10 million, but got to 10 million purely by SEO. So that goes to show you the power of this market, in the sense that the size, right? It can support multiple 10 million ARR companies, no problem, right? And the other thing you want to understand about this whole space is that all of these companies have low NPS, right? Because the whole tactic itself, cold outreach, is hard, right? Nobody wants to hear from a stranger and buy something from them. So it's a low NPS market with, but everyone wants to try it, right? Because what will you do, right? If you're not doing cold outreach and you don't have a brand, like what will you do, right, to get leads? So it's a very interesting market from that perspective. So yeah, that's what I feel about this market in a nutshell, and the other players and how they've approached it.
When we talked about your situation, you mentioned that there were three main challenges. The first one was around brand building and awareness, as so far you've grown mostly through content and SEO. Um, the second one is about what are strategic decisions that you need to take, because you've been at this business for 4 years. This year you've been kind of flat, and so you need to make a decision on where to go next. And the third one is about the fact that you're managing actually a mid-sized companies, because compared to other players, you are in India. You have a team in India. You have access to quality labor, but very affordable quality labor. And so your team is 12 full time, and a lot of contractors, especially on the content side, and that's a lot of people to manage for
Yeah.
you. So you have a small business, relative speaking. I mean, at least by American standards,
Hmm.
but you have a large team, which
Hmm.
is challenging. So these are the three challenges that we talked about, and I think that we'll go over each one. Maybe Victoria, what challenge do you want to go at first? And what questions or what thoughts do you have for Saurav?
Yeah, I think we can go with the first challenge, building brand awareness, because I would say that before building brand awareness, there are some things that must be done. But before going into that, I would like to know what was your process and thinking behind your messaging. How did you approach it all these years? How it changed? And basically, how did you build your messaging?
Yeah. So For me, it was a very simple, like jobs to be done type of messaging, which is you want to message hundreds of people on email and LinkedIn, and this tool will help you do that, right? So we didn't go deep into the use case, like why are you messaging hundreds of people on email and LinkedIn? We don't want to know, right? And we don't want to put it on the website. If you want to message hundreds of people, we can help you do that, right? You can get leads, right? So that's in the use cases. You can combine email and LinkedIn, that's in the use cases. And then there's testimonials, right? If you look at the website, like, hey, these people also message hundreds of people on LinkedIn, and this is their story. So we approached it from a very like utilitarian jobs to be done type of approach, which is, this is what you want to do, this tool will help you do it. Like no bells and whistles around it.
Okay, because my approach is also very utilitarian, and I think we'll match here. But if Pascal, you allow me to go a little bit more
Sure,
into messaging.
Go ahead.
And there is a framework I'm working on. It's based empathy messaging, and it's around how people are discovering new SaaS products. And it's based on 4 questions. Because when you go to a SaaS page, you want to know first, what's that? And should I care? After you identify that, that's something interesting, before going and investing time and effort into discovering the product, you want to answer yourself if this product is for you. Like, does the copy match my profile, my needs, my pain points? And then if it's an S, you go to the how does it work? And here you want to see not only a cluster of features, you want to see exactly how the product matches all of your process and how it's aligned with what you do. Because when you are confronted with a cluster of features, it feels disjointed and it may feel disoriented. And only after you answer these 3 questions for the user or for the lead, they may have a 4th question, which is, how is this different from the rest? And this is when we talk about brand and product differentiation. But first, we have to work on these 3 pillars. What's that? Is it for me? How it works? And from what I have analyzed on your page, unfortunately, at the moment, it doesn't quite answer these questions. And I will go more in depth to explain why. But I think these are some great opportunities for you to actually improve the messaging. There is so much room for improvement, and I think you can benefit greatly from that.
Sure.
So we can start with positioning. And analyzing the page, I noticed one issue, which I called it multi-positioning. Multi-positioning plus misleading information. I have a list of, like, not sentences, but a list of ways in which you position the product. For example, in some places you say that it's a sales automation software, which is not the case. It's misleading because it focuses on LinkedIn and email, but it's not a broader sales automation, so a workflow. And then you talk about it as a lead generation platform. Then you talk about it as a CRM substitute. After that, you talk about it as an AI-driven outreach tool. After that, as a multi-channel outreach tool. And finally, a LinkedIn engagement tool. So it's like, whoa, there are so many things that are happening, and I have so little attention to. The thing is that when you go, I see it as a positioning problem. Because when you go on the website, you first want to know, okay, what's that? Right off the bat, what I'm looking at. So first I would start solving the positioning problem. I don't know if you have any comments about that or any questions.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. You're actually right about this, because even though the core of it is a multi-channel outreach tool, it is used for these kinds of things, right? Like, which is used for lead generation. It is used for part of sales automation, like sales prospecting automation, to be honest. And so I think what would help is just having one thing, right, as opposed to 5 things, because maybe the 5 things can be used to a separate section called use cases, right? And then sales prospecting, lead gen.
I think I have a solution for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move now to the question number 3, how it works. I'm not sure if we can call it a multi-channel outreach tool, because it takes care only of email and LinkedIn. It doesn't take care of SMS, of WhatsApp, and still it can be misleading. So I would really go into research and identify the right positioning. But this is not what this meeting is about. But as a solution, okay, yes, indeed, the platform does so many cool things, but it doesn't show what it can do on the website. Because you have the features modules, and I think you have the AI assistant module, but it doesn't actually, first of all, it doesn't match the workflow of users when they do this process of outreaching. And second, it feels convoluted, confusing. There are so many things one after another. People don't know how features work together. So how can you solve this problem? My suggestion is to structure your software in 4 modules. And for each module to create a product page. So here, each module can contain feature clusters and sub-features. And I'll tell you what the modules are because I did my homework. So module number 1, we can call it prospecting. And here you can have feature clusters such as lead sourcing, data enrichment, because that's something you have on the platform.
Yeah.
Module number 2, it's outreach. We have prospecting, then we have outreach. And here I identified 3 feature clusters: campaigns, personalizations, and follow-up automation. Does this match more or less the structure?
Yeah, it does.
2 more modules. After that, we have a 3rd module, which is management. You have all this data. You have to do something with it. And here we can have feature cluster number 1, smart inbox, feature cluster number 2, lead organization, and all these have their own sub-features. And the 4th module, which I think it's brilliant and it's super strong, because this is something that you're offering. And I was surprised that you don't show this on the website, at least not in a clear way. It's analytics. And here we have 3 feature clusters: performance analytics, prospect insights, and team analytics, which is huge for agencies, actually. So if you reorganize the way you present the software on the website, the people will go to the nav bar, they click on product, they see all these 4 pages, and they automatically know what they can do. I can prospect, outreach, I can manage everything I have, and I can see everything. The product discovery gets super easy. And before going to brand, awareness, I always advocate for making things simple and clear for users. Does this make sense to you?
It makes a lot of sense because it's actually 4 products in one. It's not one product, right? The one product would have been just LinkedIn and email outreach, and that's it. You get in, you do LinkedIn and email outreach. But yeah, there are different parts to it, which is before the LinkedIn and email outreach part and after the LinkedIn and email outreach part, right? So it makes sense to have it segmented out that way, yeah.
Because what we want is for people to be able to navigate the website and navigate the product. And before they sign up, they want to know what's that. Because after I checked the website, I had one idea about the product. After I sign up and I checked the knowledge base, I realized that no, that's something completely different. And the range of possibilities is much larger and much more interesting than presented on the website. So I think this is a huge opportunity to present the software differently.
No, I absolutely agree. This is actually is a good insight because for us, we focused on the most core thing, which is the LinkedIn and email outreach automation, which is the largest category. But at the same time, there's a lot to be done before and after that.
And it's important because I remember that you were telling me that you have, I think, 15,000 visitors a month on your website or something like that.
Yeah, 15.
That's a lot of people that are coming your way. And improving conversion for that is a huge opportunity.
Yep. So we get about out of these 15,000 right now, we get about 300 free trials a month.
Okay.
Right. So it would be what, like I just do the math. It's about 2%, right?
Yeah, 2%.
Sign up rate. So even if we get it to like a 2.5 or a 3%, I mean, it's good, good extra improvement. Yeah.
It's not only that, because we answered to the 2 questions. What's that and how it works? But there is a 3rd question, which is very important. Is this for me? And I know that you have this question, whether you have to go multi-ICP or if you should focus on one ICP. But before doing that, I can tell you this is not the problem yet. The problem is how you talk to people on the website. Because I read it and I noticed that, okay, you're working now with multiple ICPs. And I don't like this term because it focuses only on the demographics, firmographics, but it doesn't go deep into people's issues and problems that you can actually reflect on the website. So the thing is that if you go, whether you go for multiple ICPs or for one ICP, there is a framework, 3 building blocks on which you can build your messaging. And these 3 building blocks require research and investigation. The first building block is the pain cluster. This means a group of issues people have that, if ignored and unresolved, they lead to losing money. I mean, for me, this is the pain. Like, it's not about, it's nice to have to be able to personalize. No, no, no. It's about losing money, because you don't do that and you lose clients. Then you take the pain cluster and you associate it with the cost of doing nothing. You are translating this into money. This is how much you lose by not being able to attract the right prospects, because you failed in the process, because your team didn't follow up, because. And then you associate this pain cluster plus the cost of doing nothing with specific solutions that you're offering through the platform. This can be outreach automation, follow-up automation, whatever. Like, and if you have multiple ICPs, it's important to identify, at least for the homepage, like an overarching pain clusters that every single ICP can identify with. Like, doesn't matter if it's a sales team, solopreneur, whatever, they still have problems with slow manual outreach. So this is a pain cluster that everyone can identify with. But if you go for one ICP, this allows you to go super granular. Because if you go with agencies, obviously you want to put aside the slow manual outreach, and you want to focus on granular pain clusters such as unmet client expectations. Like, if you fail to deliver this to your clients, like, you won't have a business, basically.
Yeah.
The good thing is that you can still have multiple ICPs. I don't go into this conversation because each business is different, each market is different, so I'm no one to leave my opinion on that. But if you go with multiple ICPs, I would recommend you to have overarching pain clusters and overarching messaging for all of them on the homepage and the product pages, maybe. And this is not easy, obviously. But then have separate solution pages for each ICP and go super granular. Like, for agencies, we solve these specific issues. For solopreneurs, these specific issues, and so on. Does this make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, we've not yet segmented by pain, or at least made it very clear by pain, right? We do a lot of that in our marketing emails, though, but somehow we don't do that on our website. So that's a clear, like, low hanging fruit for us to focus on. So
Exactly.
we do a lot of research around pain points, right? We read customer reviews of our product, our competitors' product. So there's our process where we look at like real G2 reviews of, let's say, Volexy, and say, hey, what was the customer's language around the pain points that this tool solved, and we use that in our marketing emails. And like, we have a pain point email series, that's what we call it. So we do that, but somehow we've not done it on our website. So that's a clear win for us.
Yeah, and finally, just to close this topic, like, I say that these are issues, but I see them as awesome opportunities, because I believe that if you improve all these items, which obviously is not easy and requires research, but I believe that with the traffic that you have right now, I'm sure that you're going to get an increase in conversion rate. And but in terms of brand awareness, the challenge that you mentioned in the beginning, I think that we shouldn't touch this aspect yet until everything is the basic and the foundation is built. Because only after we did the research for the three first pillars, we can then go deeper into, okay, what makes us different? Is it the way we do things? Is it a specific vision or philosophy? Is it a specific capability, or a certain way in which we serve a very specific niche? But you see, I mean, at least in my head, I won't go into exploring differentiation without having clear ideas about what these three pillars are. Yeah. That's it.
No, that 100% makes sense, because that exercise will inform how do we go about brand building, or how do we, like, what do we say in our brand building efforts, or who do we target for that brand. Like, do we just go completely just into agencies and say, hey, if you're an agency, we are the tool for you, don't look at anything else. Like, it's it's a choice to make, but before that, those four things need to be in there, like the product side as well as the pain point side.
And I think that, I mean, the reality is that there are options. Like, you can decide to go super deep and focus on only one customer profile. You can also have different pages for different customer profiles where you show them that you understand what their needs are. You can brand certain products certain ways. You can have Sales Robot agency and Sales Robot, I don't know, consumers or whatever, so that you show them that it's not the same product. So there are different ways you can do it depending on your needs and your strategic decisions. Because if we go about the strategic decisions, we mentioned whether we wanted to stay broad, to niche down, to even evaluate the product. Like, have you thought of it? Like, what's in your mind today on these different dimensions?
To look at positioning, we like let's look at what we have tried to do till now and what where that has gotten us to, and then look at what we can do next, right? So in the past, we've kept our positioning or tried to keep our positioning relatively simple, which is um, cold outreach automation tool for everybody, right? It could be like those three segments I mentioned, right? Solopreneur versus small sales team versus large sales team. And so far, the growth has not been through word of mouth. It has been through inbound traffic, right? So that's why we have a large team of 16 people focusing on putting out a lot of content and ranking it on Google and getting customers that way. That has been our channel that has worked. Um, so when it comes to the positioning, broad versus narrow, right now we've chosen to stay broad because of a very simple reason, which is our channel of growth is SEO till now, right? And that's what has supported us till now. So for us, via SEO, we don't really control who shows up. Like it could be a solopreneur, it could be a large sales team, it could be a mid-size sales team, right? That's one. So I think, and I've been thinking about it lately. I think the whole positioning narrative or the positioning exercise, um, you can't really comment on it until you get good at another growth channel, right? So it's more of a chicken and egg problem. The positioning doesn't exist in a vacuum. It has to be married with a growth channel, right? That growth channel could be SEO. That growth channel could be like just outreach and community building for a specific niche. Positioning, that growth channel could be whatever, like TikTok or just that particular type of short form video type of stuff. So there's a lot of growth channels to consider, and I think you never think of positioning in a vacuum. You have to marry a growth channel and say, okay, with this positioning and with this particular growth channel, I think these two will click, which is like product market fit or product GTM channel. That is what I'm calling it. Um, so from that perspective, I think we've some experiments in mind going forward. So we want to keep it broad, but align different growth channels, right? So for example, right now, one experiment that we're thinking of is the most tech forward B2B sales team of less than 10 people, right? So that's a niche. Mostly these are like software development companies. Typically they've raised a seed or series A, and they have 5 to 10 SDRs who's trying to get good results, and they are tech forward, which means that they're not the type of people who will just sit in and cold call all day all night, right? They want to explore how the latest tech tools like SalesRobot can help them build pipeline better, right? And for that, the medium is LinkedIn, because that's where they hang out the most. So it's possible to create some brand there, right, and put out great content that will help them solve this problem of theirs, which is how do you use tech rather than just cold calling all day to build pipeline, because cold calling doesn't work as well anymore, right? It's not no longer the 90s. Apple hates you if you're cold calling, and AT&T hates you. So yeah, so that's an experiment. So what I've thought of for the next year, and I would love your feedback on it, which is uh, the positioning should be iterated based on whether you've discovered a channel that repeatably works, because I'm a big fan of repeatable channels. That's why SEO has been a big great focus for me. So until you have a channel, it doesn't make sense to niche down.
Okay, first of all, I have a question. What's your definition for positioning?
Okay, for me, the positioning is what does this product solve for who?
If I can insert here something,
Sure.
there is a go-to-market strategist on LinkedIn. His name is Gary Justice, and he has a very interesting framework about the go-to-market, especially now, especially for startups. And in the first phase, he says it's the phase of selling to learn, like sell to as many ICPs as possible, as broad as possible, for you to be able to actually learn the industries, learn the markets, and discover who is the perfect match for you. And after that, you narrow to 1, 2 ICPs to win the niche. But this narrowing is based on based on numbers, basically. Like for the past 1, 2 years, who brought the most amount, like 70, 60% of the revenue. And then once you nail that, the third stage is expand to grow now. when you go, you're capturing more and more and more markets. So yeah, this actually goes in line. What you said goes in line with this framework a lot.
Yeah, so about that, I also have a question to ask. So if you look at our numbers, I'll tell you a little bit about our numbers and what this revenue is made of, like the 600 KRR, who is paying us for what, right? So if you look at half of this revenue, nearly half of this revenue is built off, agencies, right? Who have clients, they either white label us or they use us directly and use it to service their clients. And if you look at the churn rate also among this segment, it's the lowest, right? Because they might lose a client, but we don't see it because they might gain three more clients, right? So for us, the churn isn't actually visible, even if they have churn, right? Because they do their own business development and they do their own lead generation and all of that. So that's one, right? If you look at historical data of our customer base, agencies have been a very good customer segment for us. The other half is mostly like small sales teams, right? So could be 1 or 2%, could be just the founder trying to use cold outreach to reach out to investors or reach out to potential customers and all of that. That is one segment. And the other is like small sales team, right? So maybe they are um, like 2 people, 3 people, and industries also are broad, right? From in that segment, right? Could be an accountant trying to land more clients, could be a virtual assistant service in the Philippines trying to get more clients to sell them more Philippine based customer service reps. So yeah, that's the setup so far. Half agencies and half like a broad distribution of small businesses.
Both, and in both cases, these people hang out on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, in both cases they hang out on LinkedIn. That's a channel, yes. But I would say the agencies who do a lot of LinkedIn outreach or um, the agency ecosystem is actually pretty alive on Facebook groups as well. So if you look at Go High Level as a example, they've built out their entire ecosystem on Facebook. So it actually depends on what part of America you're in. This is very interesting from their thesis. Like if you're more of a middle America type, business, you're much more likely to use Facebook groups as opposed to LinkedIn to get knowledge about the latest, technologies or the latest tactics around lead generation or the latest service providers, right? So that's one thing I've noticed. Versus if you're more of a tech first agency, right, who is trying the latest tech tools and the latest AI innovations and all of that, you're much more likely to to be either international or you're much more likely to be in the Silicon Valley or like New York or some of these bigger cities. So we were actually doing some experimentation around who's paying us the most, and for us it's more like the middle America, the more Trump voting states that have paid us the most amount of money. So that's an interesting tidbit that has emerged, that somehow lead gen agencies in Trump voting states just use sales robot more often than anybody else.
When I think about what you just said, I'm almost asking myself whether, going back to what I just said earlier, having Sales Robot and then creating two products, one for more the solopreneurs, small businesses, and one for agencies, and naming them differently, like Sales Robot and Sales Robot for agencies.
Hmm.
And then for Sales Robot for agencies, if they're on Facebook, then just swarm Facebook. I mean, just be present there, be very available, be incredibly useful. I mean, this is where you started actually, because
Hmm.
you mentioned that this is where you got your first customers, and this is probably not where the Wallaxy and the Lemlist are, because they have to create followings on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
and so you can create and focus on pushing the message for Sales Robot for agencies there, um, and then use LinkedIn more as a way to promote Sales Robot for SMBs.
Hmm.
Um, and that way, you're not conflicting these two channels. Um, you can also use your like yourself and maybe somebody else from your team as two people that can communicate around this message.
Hmm.
Um, Maybe, for example, if you have somebody who is the lead of your sales team that's
Hmm.
using Sales Robot every day,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe their job should be less to manage the team and more to post content on how he's using the tool, the software to communicate with clients and to engage in clients, and the highs and lows of cold outreach, which he's feeling right now. I think that this is also a way to do it. Um, at least this is an angle you could take. What do you think, Victoria?
I have a question first. So
Mhm.
the product is specifically for LinkedIn. It doesn't. I mean, it's not focused on Facebook or.
It's
Okay,
LinkedIn and email automation in one tool. Yeah.
and you won't expand it to
No, I don't
other
want to know.
channels. Like in this case, I feel maybe at the moment it can be a bit dangerous to separate the product in two, like sales robot for agencies and for small teams. I would suggest that just have the solution, the ICP pages. This, as I see it, it will be an easier route at the moment. As for being on both LinkedIn and Facebook, first the question is whether you have the capacity. Like, if you go into and if you're going into founder-led growth, which is actually what helped Lemlist because of Guillaume Maubèche. He was everywhere. Like, I couldn't escape him. Like, even on TikTok. If you go this route, you have to know what your POV is. What makes you different? Why people should pay attention to you? What are you teaching them differently? There's a great POV and messaging expert also on LinkedIn, Joe Daniels. He talks a lot about developing this POV, and this actually can help you with brand differentiation, highlight what makes you different. But before jumping to channels, like, think very carefully and work through the POV. You can also test it on LinkedIn, for example, and see how it helps you shape your POV. But for example, only after 2 months of being active on LinkedIn, I can say that now I'm finally being able to discover and actually shape my POV. So it takes time and trial and error. But yeah, I won't just focus on which channels to be on, but what I'll be saying, because sometimes this is more important than the channel.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I 100% agree with this. And this is exactly what I've been thinking of lately, right? Because in 2025, I want to do a lot more founder led content. Um, so that will actually, Pascal, take us back to your question as well around managing your team and all of that. So coming back to the question around POV, and this is what is something I want to test. And you're absolutely right, Victoria. It's not something you sit in a room and discover and like have a aha moment, like like Archimedes. That's not how it happens. So put it out there, test. If it resonates, it resonates, right? Ultimately, the market will tell you. So here's what I think, right? When it comes to this whole market, the reason this whole industry has low NPS, and this is just my thesis after working on it for 4 years, is because most cold emailers or cold outreach people, they have bad strategy. They have bad strategy around who to target and bad strategy around what to say. Cold outreach is very simple. You're reaching out to the right person, saying the right thing, the right outcome will happen. So this industry has changed a lot over the past 5 to 10 years. A lot of people have started seeing it as proper spam, right? And it is to a large degree if you get those two right wrong, or any of those two wrong. So my POV, and this is something I want to test, is around can you use AI to refine this, right? Because AI has some good intuition about the best practices because it's trained on the best practices. I'm not saying use AI to write copy. That's a terrible idea. It will do a bad job. But you can use it to refine your strategy. And then based on the strategy, you can also have, a lot of insight into, okay, this was the right strategy for me. And then using the right strategy, these are some of the best performing templates from some of the best experts out there. And how can AI modify this template for my particular use case, right? Or my particular offer or target market. So that's one thing I wanted to test. Any ideas on that, or any other, based on what you've seen in this market or your own experience, any other hypotheses would you feel is worth testing? And based on our uh, customer base so far, like what to test, right? Because we could test a different thing also, like how agencies are dying, right? That's a provocative thing to test, right? how lead gen agencies how lead gen agencies are dying, right? Because it's so hard to get leads, and actually, you can get a client and then the client will leave you in 3 months, right? Like that's the reality right now of agencies.
There is a research paper written by Jaco van der Koge. I'm not sure if
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I
winning by
pronounce his
design.
name. And the research paper is named in 2025. AI won't just assist people; it will replace them. But
Mm.
what his POV is that you have the go-to-market strategy, and the AI is going to be better and better and better to replace all these processes. Like in the 60s, the automation of fabric plants happened, and we replaced humans with machines.
Mm.
And when you told me about AI in the cold outreach process, I also thought about this, possibility of explaining how AI can replace every step in the process with much better practices. And if this is something you can refine and also reflect in the product, then I think this could be an extraordinary POV because it's very aligned with today's worries people have.
Pascal, what do you think about this whole POV testing?
I think that it's in a way you need to have a different point of view. You can't beat Guillaume
At his own game? Yeah,
at
not
his own
possible.
game. So you have to change the table, and you don't have much to lose. I mean, you have less to lose than him. So I think that broadly speaking, it's always a good idea to take something that is edgy, especially since your business model is not necessarily predicated on selling a bunch of seats. I mean, it is to some degree, but if you move to a number of emails or whatever, it would not disrupt completely your pricing model. Whereas for Lemlist, I mean, I pay $69 a month for Lemlist for 2 accounts today. The reality is that we're not sending that many emails, and so if you're telling me that I can pay according to the number of emails that the AI is sending, I would pay maybe a tenth of what I'm paying today.
Mm.
Um, so I do agree with you that there's something, and I think that I think that there is an interest for people to understand both the challenges that they're going to face and understanding the tools that they're going to replace them. Like nobody's sure,
Mm.
everybody's nervous, and I think that everybody's anxious to learn and have more point of views on this element. I think that people like John Rush and others have been quite successful online by tapping into that sphere of
Mm.
what will be the creator of tomorrow, what will be the software of tomorrow, etc., etc. I mean, I've tried it with less success than him because he taps more into the fear of a beginner indie hacker. So in your case, it's about the agency, like they want to know, and if they think that you can be in their um, on their side, then they will be interested in what you have to say. So I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting point of view. Yes.
Awesome. So, what I would, sorry, Victoria, you were saying.
No, I'm sorry, just to add here because an idea popped up, maybe not related to what we're discussing right now, but we are talking about agencies. And in this case, I think we should consider the fact that there are two types of agencies that you're serving, because there are agencies for using your tool for their own clients to do the prospecting. And then
Yeah.
you have agencies that use your tool white label to version
Hmm.
for their specific business that is focused on prospecting. So it's very, very important to differentiate these two and create messages separated for this two. Okay, sorry.
Hmm.
I thought it's important to mention that.
Yes.
No,
It's a good
absolutely,
idea.
absolutely.
Yes.
Because when you white label, you're actually aspirational, right? It's almost like taking a franchisee business of, let's say, McDonald's, right? Because you want to be an entrepreneur and run your own, business. So it's actually two very different motivations when you're selling, Sales Robot as a seat versus Sales Robot as a white label, right? So you have to tap into that mindset that the agency founder has. Perfect.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah. Go ahead.
No, no, I agree, and I think that because you're in a very large market, very very broad, very deep market, um, I don't personally believe that people will just go online to some software that will do work for them and they will let it happen. I think that some people will,
Yeah.
but the same way that, for example, if you look at the HR market in the US, you have HR consultants that are setting up payroll, that are setting up I mean, you can use Gusto for your SMB, but people still want other people to do the work for you,
Yeah.
just because they're afraid, they're lazy, they have other skill sets, and they like the idea of somebody else doing the job, and they're okay paying them a little something to offset that thing for them. And I think that for sales automation or for lead generation, I mean, it's definitely the case. For some people, it's very nerve wracking because it's about getting a rejection. It's about like all these very emotional, personal things. And I think that agencies will have something to say in being the ones that are taking the rejection.
Mm.
And so the entrepreneur is kind of two steps removed from the rejection, right? He's learning from a human,
Mm.
not directly from a market, which is, I mean, in a weird way, it's reassuring, right?
Yeah.
It's like when we were in high school and your friend tells you that the girl doesn't like you.
Yeah.
You're
It's
not
actually
happy
better.
about it, but it's not the same as if she told you directly, right?
Yeah. No, interesting point there around the whole debate. So coming back to my other question around
Yeah,
and the other challenge around a large team. So
yeah.
one thing I've been noticing lately, and this is a very good point that you said, Pascal, which is the sales manager or the sales head of sales should focus more on content creation than actual sales. And I 200% agree with you at this point in our journey. So um, how do we redefine the KPIs, right? So I've been having conversations with him, and he said, if you want me to do this, just move me to a full time content manager role, right? And he's one of those guys. I've been very lucky to get him. He's a natural content creator, and he's very vivacious and has a good screen presence and all of that. So with a large ship, it's harder to turn, right? Like that's the problem. So how do you actually, let's say we put in this new plan that, hey, we're going to try to test POV, we're going founder led, we just want to obviously reorganize the whole website to say this blah blah blah, one product 1 2 3 4, pain point 1 2 3 4. How do you actually put that into action with a team? Do we like just branch off the freelancer somewhere and I never talk to them and I just talk to these guys, or how do you see that?
I mean, it depends what you want him to say. But for example, if your idea is that he would tell people how his struggles, his own struggles, leading a team that does lead generation and using your product for that, I think that's one angle
Mm.
where he's a practitioner. He has his own sets of emotions. He can share these emotions, which is make him more relatable, and yet shows how he has been using the software and both having some wins and sometimes losses and what he has learned from a process. I think that's a good way he could do it, which is why I don't think that he should be full content. I think that he still
Mm.
needs to be somehow involved, because then if he's otherwise in a year he will not have any battle scars anymore. Like
Yep.
now he still has the battle scars of the last 3 or 4 years, but
Mm.
in a year he will have forgotten them. He will have been full content, and his life will be different, right?
Yeah.
um, and so I think that there's value in being in the trenches and sharing what you're learning in the trenches, because that makes you more personable, and it's something that where I can, if I follow you, I can learn what you're
Mm.
doing, knowing that your needs and mine are not similar, but we're still both using Sales Robot to grow our business.
I fully agree with Pascal, because what's interesting to read a standardized generic how to post or article or something, or something like, okay, I did that. This is what happened. This is what my feelings are. This is how I feel. This is what I'll do. It's much more interesting to read personal stories, but to have good personal stories, you have to live them.
Do the
So
work.
you can separate the work and the. the content.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is one thing I've been doing myself, right? Posting a lot on YouTube and like talking about the success stories. But one of the most important things I think we can do at this point is to write about the failure stories as well, because not every customer has a great experience with Sales Robot. That's why this whole industry has low NPS, right? It's not like just us that struggle with cold outreach. Everybody does. So it's
Hmm?
important to share that and have that as a, like resource. Like these are the, like maybe a playlist of like client fails or client wins, right? Both are I think critical to building real connection, right? Because otherwise you just come across as somebody. Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody puts success stories, case studies, but every business will have failures. So yeah, I think that's one thing, making a note in my own head to have a client fails channel.
Like
Yeah.
basically, you can create a series, let's say, of failures. This is what happened, but this is how I reverse engineered and understand why the failure happened. And you can have 10 posts about different 10 failures and so on. I mean, you can dig and you can find some very interesting stories to tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, we see that all the time, right? We see that all the time. So this is something we're planning to do a lot in content going forward, like even things like, like a cold email roast, as simple as that, like just me and Kunal, the sales manager we have, because we talk about this all the time, like, hey, this client canceled, and then we go look at the messaging, and it was so terrible. I was like, okay, obviously AI can critique it, but we can make it really funny when we critique it, right? So I mean, that is an opportunity to just go on YouTube or LinkedIn and talk about it.
Let's, I mean, we're approaching the end of the podcast. And I want to end on I would say, lighter note. I have a few questions for you. Um, the first one, which is one of my favorite interview questions. Um, what did you learn, Sora, from your mother?
Oh my God, that's a long topic. But yeah, like my mom was one of those people who just instilled that like spirit of like being super competitive in me, right? Like from a very early age. So I think that's what I learned the most from her, right? Like just making sure that you don't lose, right? Like it's one of those things. Like all three kids in our in the household, they all turned out decent, right? My younger brother also went to IIT. My sister is a doctor from a top medical school here. So yeah, it was all mom. So yeah, I learned a lot about like competing from her.
And you went to one of the most competitive markets, so
Yeah,
you
so
pushed into the extreme.
competing is something that was instilled in us from a
Yeah.
very early age, all three kids. Yeah.
If without naming your competitors, what is the most overrated tool on the SaaS market today?
Oh, not in our competitors
Yeah,
space.
yeah.
I would say ClickUp. We tried it. I think it's over engineered to a point of no use. Like there's too much AI. There's all of that. So I used to like it, and we have like all our team on it. But I think that bill is something we should just look at getting rid of and move to something simpler. Maybe a Google Doc. Again,
Okay.
at the end of the day, will help.
You're the third person from whom I hear the about ClickUp. Yeah, not in a good way.
I would say my last question is, what is your most controversial view of the impact of AI in the next 3 to 5 years?
My most controversial view is that I still think it's underrated. It's not overrated enough. I think it's going to be very, very interesting. But to add to it, I think the people who are going to win with AI are actually people who think very deeply about UX. They are like the Steve Jobsian folks who are going to win, because the technology is super powerful, but it will surface in everybody's use cases in a very, very unique way, right? And the people who will get it right are the people who study those use cases very deeply, or maybe have lived those use cases for years, and they're like, okay, this particular use case can be done better with AI in this particular narrow way, which is kind of why I'm building AI into Sales Robot as well, because I've done this now for 4 years and seen how people fail with it or how people succeed with it. So to introduce subtle ways of using AI. So I still think it's underrated. It's a proper internet moment, but not in the ways people think, right? It will not be like a AGI that takes over your job. It'll be these very narrow UX at the right time tools that will, make your job much better.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you, Saurav. And thank you for this great episode of Indie Board Session.
Thank you so much, Pascal, Victoria, for doing this. This is very helpful. Like, I already have a few ideas. I'll go create the playlist right now.
Cool. Thank
Awesome.
you.